Let's bring back in Paul Mauro, Fox News contributor, former NYPD inspector, and an attorney, of course. Paul, what did you make of the news conference there? I was very interested to hear them repeatedly refer, or at least imply, that there are several other suspects here.
Yeah, that was the main takeaway, I think. And they did not caveat that, although they only seem to have indications of the fact that there are others involved. But the fact that they would come out so strongly and say, public, help us, lets me know that they right now might not have anything solid, at least as they went to press. But you can guarantee that they are scraping very hard at that. The way these things work now is that you work backwards. You want to see associations. My gut tells me they're seeing some associations. And Senator Kennedy's language seems to imply to me that he feels maybe there was a footprint that could have been picked up. If there are that many people involved, usually there's some indicia of a cell. There's always fraying at the edges. Certain things get out. And I'm wondering, and this is just speculation, I want to be clear, but given his body language and his language at the lectern, I'm wondering if they had some indicia, if there was something on the radar screen that maybe somebody wishes had been followed up. These things are very, very difficult to prevent. They always look good in 20/20 hindsight, but it sounds like we may discover there's a lot more going on here than was initially indicated.
Nicole, we understand there are definitely more than one suspect. There could be more than two. They do not know. Of course, they're not going to give that information out because they are at the very early onset of this investigation, and it could potentially derail the whole investigation. But what say you about how quickly they assess the fact that this guy was not working alone? It does seem that this truck did, in fact, change hands at some point because the vehicle was not rented by this person. It could have been rented by somebody else, changed hands. This person was the one who actually drove the truck to New Orleans and actually committed the heinous crime of barreling into a crowd on Bourbon Street. But those that facilitated the attack, they are still on the loose, and that's why these investigators are hell-bent to bring justice.
Right. I picked up a few things from this press conference as well, and I have to agree with Paul. When the ASAC Alethea Duncan, I actually know Alethea. She was actually in FBI Miami in the beginning of her career. She mentioned that they do not believe that Jabbar was solely responsible. My personal intuition is that Jabbar was not solely responsible. I think this is probably a very well orchestrated and complex attack. But one thing I definitely picked up on was when Senator Kennedy said, look, we're going to give you time to conduct this investigation. And we want to be fair because you can't compromise an investigation. That is true. You always hear it's an ongoing federal investigation. We can't give comment. And sometimes that's them trying not to be transparent. But sometimes it really is legitimate. And you do need to keep it confidential in order to not destroy getting information that you need. But it would not shock me if this individual was on someone's radar at some point. And the fact that he is demanding clear transparency, that's what Americans deserve. And it's very tragic that this occurred. Thankfully, we have not seen something like this in the very recently in the United States. But what I can tell you is, having worked for the FBI and having left the FBI, they gave full resources to January 6th capital violence offenders, misdemeanors, and treated them with the highest level and full force of the federal government. And I sat there and watched that occur, and I sat and I said, there's got to be some very serious terrorist activity going on behind the scenes. I sure hope that the FBI is allocating those resources towards something like this. And again, I cannot say that there's a clear, link, but what I am saying is that the Americans do deserve full transparency. The FBI does deserve to have time to conduct a full investigation. But this is what we need to be focusing on, and we cannot say, January 6th Capitol violence, it is still on the homepage of the FBI's website almost 4 years later. And I sure hope that this was not on the FBI's radar, because if so, there will be some serious questions that have to be answered, because I can tell you how many resources they have dedicated towards other misdemeanor offenses when something like this was in the works.
All right, let's bring Paul back in here. Paul, and I'm interested in the background of this attacker here. 42 years old, born in the United States, from Texas, served in the U.S. Army. Now, I'm assuming, Paul, that one of the urgent questions that investigators need to look at here is, was this person recently radicalized, or have they been essentially radical for a long time, but were part of some sort of sleeper cell?
Well, they're certainly going to be looking at that. One of the things they'll look at is if that name is actually his birth name, or did he change his name at some point? And that would be some indication that at one point he had some change of identity and maybe his ideological outlook. They'll also be looking at what training he had in the military. Was he trained in any kind of demolition work, which might have been how he attempted to build these IEDs, which very fortunately did not detonate. So, yeah, they're going to be looking at all those things, and it's going to be part and parcel of what I said earlier, which is, was there a way to pick them up? People these days are radicalized almost always online. And look, that's needle in a haystack stuff, especially these days with encrypted apps and all the other avenues that are open to people who are interested in this sort of stuff. But that cognitive aperture, as it's called, when people find their way into these forums, they have maybe a slipping down life, things aren't going very well for them, and this provides an identity. They're going to be looking for that sort of narrative to see when it developed and who was there with him at the time. Who was he in contact with? Who radicalized him? Because clearly he was radicalized, according to the reporting of what we've got so far. And I just want to mention one other thing. The similarities to the Safula Saipov event here in New York City, which, full disclosure, I was on scene for, are really, really striking. Vehicle that was rented, a crowd during a holiday, jumping out of the car armed with a gun. Saifula's guns were not real guns. Turns out it was a starter pistol. ISIS flag on the back of the truck. These are a lot of data points that track to that event. And I have a suspicion that when they get in there, rip his computer and do all the other work, you're going to see that he was probably a student of some of these things. And then they're going to ask themselves, could we have picked it up?
I mean, I think that's the question. Could it have been prevented? I mean, we've heard about the bollards on the street. We've heard about the physical, blockades that could have potentially prevented this terrorist from driving down up onto the sidewalk and mulling over people. But, I mean, Paul, as far as prevention is concerned, part of our federal law enforcement's job is to prevent terrorists from following through. And we know that there's a lot of cells in this country. We know with our immigration crisis that there are people here that want to do Americans harm. We don't know the exact motive here. We don't know if this person is in or persons are involved in a larger terror organization. But the ISIS flag on the back of the truck says it all. And the fact that you're saying that this does parallel other attacks similar to, let's say, Germany, for example, and here in New York City. We know that these people have been in this country. This is an American citizen who once was in the Army, and at some point something went horribly wrong and he became radicalized. But how do you actually pinpoint these people from pointing them out and maybe tracking them before they are able to pull something off like this?
Very difficult in a First Amendment society, because you do have a right to free speech, and it's a very gray area as to how far you can go. I can tell you here in New York, when we did this work, it was extremely heavily lawyered, because it's a continuum between your First Amendment rights and then into getting into a radicalized area. And that continuum is a tightrope that you have to walk. I would say, though, that one of the things we do have to be cognizant of is at the end of the day, the FBI is not that large an organization. That's not a pejorative. It's just a fact. They have a very wide remit to cover. I would argue that maybe they've taken their eye off the ball in recent years, and that we have to get back to the basics of what they're supposed to be doing, which is this kind of work. But at the end of the day, you need the state and the locals, and they need them desperately. That's why you have the JTTFs. They're the front lines on this thing. There's going to be a lot of questions very clearly regarding the placement of the bollards and all of that stuff. Look, I'm sympathetic here. I'm not saying that it went perfectly, but it's very hard to secure large events. Even in the Saipov event that I just described, NYPD had secured the Halloween event with sanitation trucks, and as a result, Saipov called off his initial attack and went down the West Side Highway. Now the West Side Highway is secured with bollards. So you tend to be reactive with these things. I hope we're taking away the right lessons. But at the end of the day, it has to be a whole-of-government approach. You have to stay vigilant, as I said earlier. For the people who do this kind of work, the further we get from 9/11, the closer we get to 9/10. And these are the things that are existential threats to the people in this country, and not some of the nonsense, in my eyes, that the FBI and the federal apparatus has been pointed at during recent years.
Nicole Parker, thank you for your expertise on this tragic day.
Paul Mauro, thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.